This is a course in world history, and the very first question that we'll deal with is, when do we start? Do we start with the creation of the world? Do we start with when the world began? That's tough. The world is really, really old. The creation of Earth deals with all sorts of science stuff that we don't have time for here. So no, we're not going to start there. Do we start with the creation of humanity, with when humans started being humans? Maybe, and that's a complicated question which we'll get to in a second, but I want to begin with an even more basic question, an even more basic problem, which is, how do we know anything about what happened in the far, far distant past? History is the study of past events through writings and pictures and films and things that the past has left to us. The problem is humanity is older than movies. We're older than the technology of photography. Humans are older than English. Humans are older than every language. Humans are older than the tradition of writing things down at all. So when you get to the very murky, very, very distant past, there's nothing that those people left to us in the form of books for us to read and for us to use to know about them. So how do we know anything about those people that existed in what's called prehistory, the time before, where there were people, but they weren't writing anything down? And the way that we know about that time is through the field of archaeology, the study of things and stuff that people left behind. Those things are called artifacts. Those can be, a vase, a campfire, cave painting. This particular cave painting that you should be seeing now is how we know, for instance, that ancient early humans knew how to ski, that they knew how to create skis. We learned that through the artifact that you have in front of you right now. The other thing that we can use are fossils, the leftovers of the people, of the animals from those times themselves. Through these fossils, we are able to piece together the story of early human evolution, of how genetically and anatomically modern humans came to be. That is as good a place to start our world history course as any. So 1.5 million years ago, there were no genetically, anatomically modern humans. You could have looked anywhere in the world, we weren't around. There were things that looked like this guy. These are our great-grandparents. They're called Homo erectus. They're a great ape that walks upright, and they were the first creatures on the planet to use fire. They used fire for their own ends, and they made simple tools. Now, some animals will kind of use tools, but these guys used tools that were an order above what other animals were doing. And so they're the sort of first baby step towards, getting out of being just an animal and being us. Next, after the Homo erectus, come the Homo sapiens. Homo sapiens are a little bit closer to us than Homo erectus, but not quite us yet. And what they do is they branch into two different, branches. One of the branches that come off of Homo sapiens are Homo sapiens sapiens. That's us. Homo sapiens sapiens are genetically, anatomically modern human beings. The other are the Neanderthals. These are our cousins. And the Neanderthals start off in Africa, which is where the Homo erectus started out, which is where all of the ancestors of humanity come from, East Africa. The Neanderthals branched out of there. They left. They started migrating out just like the Homo sapiens sapiens would later. But they were a little different from us. Their skulls are shaped a little bit differently. They're a little bit shorter, a little bit stockier. But after the Neanderthals started spreading out, the Homo sapiens sapiens, that is us, we started coming up and we started spreading out as well. And the Neanderthals flourished for a time, but then essentially they all went away. There are theories as to why that was, that they maybe couldn't handle some changes in the climate, or maybe we met them and you're meeting a person that looks a little like you but a little bit different, and maybe we took all their food and got rid of them all. There are various theories. There was also some intermixing of Homo sapiens sapiens and Neanderthals. They were close enough genetically that they could, fall in love and have families. And there was some of that as well. So we are related to Neanderthals a little bit, but mostly the Homo sapiens sapiens. That's us. And we emerge, again, in the historical record as identified through fossils, about 200,000 years ago. This is a social studies class, so we're very interested in once modern humans appear on the historical scene, once we evolve to be, again, physically the people that we are today, what did they do? How were their societies structured? And what they did with themselves, the way their economies were structured, what we call them are that they were hunter-gatherers. And what that means is that they hunted and gathered. Gathered as in like gathering berries. That's how they fed themselves. They looked for vegetables and fruits that they could find in nature. They didn't farm, they didn't create them. They looked for them and they gathered them. And then they also hunted. They had tools. We've had tools longer than we've been Homo sapiens sapiens. So they had the tools to hunt and they used them. They hunted and they also gathered. They also, interestingly, made cave paintings like this. They were us, their minds are our minds. So they clearly had some need, some drive to create art. Art's as old as humans are. We call this whole period of time that we've been talking about, the Paleolithic age, which simply means in Latin old stone. So it means old stone age. That's what this time is called. It's called the Paleolithic age. And during the Paleolithic age, people were hunter-gatherers, which sort of going in tandem with that, which means that they were nomads. Nomads means that you don't have one settled home. They didn't have like villages. They had to travel to go along with animal migration patterns. If the animals were moving over that way, they needed to go that way as well. And they also needed to go with where the seasons took them. They needed to be in places where fruits and vegetables and just stuff was growing that they could eat. So they couldn't just stick in one spot because they weren't making their own food. They had to travel. So they were nomadic hunter-gatherers. There still are, you should see a picture of a relatively modern group of nomadic hunter-gatherers. They still exist. There are still some humans who live in a nomadic hunter-gatherer fashion, but not very many. Most of us have moved on to a different period in history. Most of us live in societies that are structured very differently, but it's of course worth knowing where we all came from and what the first societies looked like. And some, again, a very small minority, but some societies still look like today. And what's amazing is that humans spread all throughout the world during this time, during the Paleolithic age, when everyone's a nomadic hunter-gatherer. This is the period of time that sees Homo sapiens sapiens spread all throughout the world. We started in East Africa. That's where we find the oldest fossils, so that's logically that's where it seems like we came from. But then we spread out. We just, with the tools and the technology that nomadic hunter-gatherers have, your legs and boats that you're able to put together just using, your fists. We were able to spread all the way, all throughout Africa, into Europe, into Asia, spread all throughout those continents, from the hottest equatorial places to deserts to really, really cold, Scandinavia, Siberia. We were able to go everywhere. We go into the islands. up above Australia, people get all the way up over into the Americas. Again, walking, they get all the way down into South America. It is literally during this time where people are nomadic hunter-gatherers that Polynesian people get in boats and go and colonize the island of Fiji, the island of Hawaii, that Easter Island, that are very, very, very isolated Pacific islands. People get there during this time of sort of relatively low technology. That's when humans go forth and inhabit every inhabitable scrap of land. Even if it's a tiny island in the middle of the ocean, people find it and they set up societies there. So we do all of that from Jump Street. It's one of the impressive accomplishments, really, of humankind, that we were able to do that, not with fancy schmancy tools, but with sharp sticks and our brains. So it's impressive. It's something to be proud of. We were able to do that. And again, the pattern of it is sort of important. That we sort of start in Africa, we spread out then there to everywhere else, and that we make it everywhere. So that in future, that's something I do want you to remember for future lessons. That when there are explorers, when there are people migrating from here to there really aren't empty spaces of land. Even when explorers are finding islands that are quite isolated, you always find people in those places, because before history even starts, in prehistory, we go forth and multiply and inhabit every single bit of the earth. And then from there, now we're going to start having civilizations and history that'll make more sense to you, that'll seem like societies that are a little bit more like the society we have today. When all that happens, people are everywhere.